because it was a part of God's Jeremiah 29:11 for your life. And so we all came together at the crossroads of the South, and we are united by a grand spirit that I want to just use the word ministry, because in a day and age that we live in, people are so consumed with themselves. And many times Christians are so consumed with themselves that they forget that there's a higher calling, and that's ministry. I'll come back to that in just a minute. I got a call yesterday from an inmate in the Cayman Islands. And he had seen the trio on this program that aired last Saturday, 3ABN, which that company, I met the president of that company at Larry Goss's funeral, did not even know who he was or existed before then. And so they own 130 TV stations all over the world. Second largest gospel TV stations in America. They have 7 networks. They have one in French, one in Russian, one in Spanish, and about 4 more. So this inmate from the Cayman Islands called and he said, I'm an inmate, but I'm in charge of prison ministry in this particular prison in the Cayman Islands. And he said, could you send me some CDs because I want to share them and pass them around to inmates in this prison? And of course we will. But it reminded me of the fact that 1% of our population is incarcerated. And we leave this place and we go out and we get in our car and we go where we want to because we're free. But 1% of the United States population is behind bars for all kinds of legitimate reasons and unfortunately many times not good reasons. And you and I both know that many times people are put in prisons and they're not guilty. But once they're there, they've lost this thing we call life. It's sucked out of them. And so the whole ministry comes into effect when people go to the trouble to say, I'm forgetting about myself. I will go to the trouble to go to a prison ministry and share the gospel with inmates. A friend of mine, Nancy Wood, that we met at when the trio was doing a TV taping in Detroit. And we shared a song with her, I Feel Heaven in This Place. And she started singing in the prison that she does ministry in. And the prisoners learned it. I feel heaven in this place. There's a verse in there that says, I feel healing in this place. So they learned it, and she felt like she had to sing it every time she would go. So this Sunday morning, she relays to me, she said, I went and I decided I wasn't going to sing it. She went there and she told the inmates that they weren't going to do I Feel Heaven in This Place, that particular. They ended up doing I Feel Heaven in This Place because you don't tell inmates that they're not going to sing a song that they want to sing. So they're singing I Feel Healing in This Place, and she said, we're singing and this black inmate jumps up and down. He says, I can see, I can see. We're not talking about scriptural when Jesus walked the shores of Galilee. We're talking about 2015, and somebody goes to the trouble to say, I'm going to give of myself to minister to inmates in a prison, and an inmate receives his sight. See? So I'm only saying that to you because I think that all of us are united by the word ministry. We went there. You may have not thought you went there for ministry. We're all involved in ministry somehow, some way, some fashion. You say, I'm not the preacher. I'm not the minister. You are a minister. You minister to people who need to find God. You minister to people on your job. Or what? Let me backtrack. We should be ministering to people on our job with our life and our words and all that. So I'm thankful that God allowed me to be an architect of songs instead of an architect of buildings, because that's what I thought I was supposed to do. And it took me quite 14 years to figure out what God wanted me to do. God knew all along where he had to take me to get me to where I needed to go. So I'm really thankful that God has allowed me to be a part of your life. I have to confess that some of the stories that you relay, I honestly don't remember. That's not just a senior moment thing. It's not just getting older thing. But I read something recently. It says, you know, the older you get, the more you have on your disc, and your disc gets full. My disc is full, so fortunately for many of you, I don't remember some of those things. By the way, I don't know if you had a chance to see the trio on this last Saturday. We did another taping, which is going to air this Saturday on 3ABN Network. You can get it different ways. Dish channel 9393, or you can download an app on your phone, 3ABN, or you can go on your laptop to 3abn.org and then click on Watch Listen, and then they've got 7 networks, so you'll click on 3ABN. Why this is special to me this coming Saturday that you'll see this lady from Russia who is in charge of their TV station in Russia. You may remember a few months back, a journalist who was anti-government in Russia was killed. Okay, that was her brother. And it just so happens in the last few months, her husband somehow died in a swimming accident in Russia. And the next Monday, her employees were going to be called in for interrogation. Okay, this is the world that we live in. So the first program that I did by myself sometime, a month ago, and we sang Whatever It Takes, and she listened to that program. She was very affected by it. And so she's going to show up on this program that you'll see Saturday. And so we're all singing Whatever It Takes. And so she, at the end, she says the words, "That's what I'll be willing to do," in Russian. Now, why that's touching to me is the fact that this woman is the song. You know, some people say, I can't sing that song yet. It's too hard for me to sing. This woman is that song. So I'm glad that God has allowed us all to be a part, connected at the hip with JCM. I went to my 55th class reunion high school, and it's not the same. You know, I went to the 50th, I went to the 55th, and I was a very important part of what went on there and all the activities. But, you know, when I went to high school, I didn't fit in then. I never went to a football game in my high school because we had young people service on Friday night, and there was no choice. I went to young people service, never went to one football game in my high school. So my high school classmates didn't really know me, and I couldn't really connect with them like maybe some others did. So when I went to the 40th, it's kind of like I was almost a celebrity. You know how like the football players are at high school level, because in that interim, people had come in contact with the music that God passed through my pen. And so, we sang your song and we did this. So I'm thinking my 55th, which was just recently, it's not the same. We have a connection in the spirit. See, it's not just JCM, it's a connection in the spirit. We're going to do this God's family thing here in a minute. This was very interesting. The trio was at Steve Gregory's church in Pennsylvania maybe a year ago, and he had this idea. He said, you know, I would like to do this where we video you from 8 angles, and we would do a cyber choir. I wasn't really familiar with the technique. So that at your homegoing, whenever that would be, that we would play this, and we would be able to have people from around the world singing as a part of God's family, and you'd be directing them. So I thought that's a cool idea. So they videoed that. And so when we were planning the reunion for this July, I said, wouldn't it be great if we could do that that was a bad idea on my part because of so much work involved. I mean, it was a tremendous amount of work and technology. So what you'll see here is, this is not really the finished project. There are 116 people from different countries all over the world. You'll notice where they're from. So the technology was hard. Some of you saw and you said it's too hard to figure out. And some people said, I can't figure it out. Have your grandkid figure out how to do it on the phone. Yeah, it was very involved. It was not easy to do, but we ended up with 116 people that did it. And so at the end, you'll see all those 116 people, and it looks like you're seeing stills, but they're all singing. But it's so small that you can't realize that. So I want to do this. They have a certain term for mixing down. See, this is not like just mixing a video. You're mixing 116 videos at the same time and syncing them all together. That's why all that business about you have to wait till the click and all that kind of thing. So what happens is the first part of this, the trio was singing live, so you won't see the trio. So we'll all be the trio. We'll all sing it. And when we do this, Kevin, if I can get you and Tracy and James to sing with me, just hopefully we'll get the entrance right. If we don't, we'll just start over. So then a lot of these people that really were singing, you don't get to see them up close and personal. So I want to redo this so we get a lot more close-up shots, okay? So we'll try to do this. So this is kind of like what we did for the July event. It's finished, but it's not finished. And we'll see what we can do here. And we'll maybe put, get on my mic. Well, I didn't mean that to sound like that. Where's the sound coming from? Of the family that's been born.
Hector on keys, Scott on drum.
Oh, I love it.
Go back to, oh yeah.
You're standing there not even singing. I'm just, where, Paul?
Okay, let's see if we can make this work.
Get up here.
Oh, okay, so what happens here is when Steve Gregory tried to send this to us today, he said it was like 635 gig. Obviously, it's big. So evidently, maybe only that much of it downloaded. Yeah. Part of the This is a download problem, you understand? Part of the family. Okay, we won't do that. Somehow, yeah, we'll get it and we'll post it. You'll see it later, okay? It was really wonderful, the whole idea. And hopefully we won't have to use that at a homegoing for a while. I mean, 2012, I was in an accident that I thought I was actually going to die. I was 59 South, for those of you who know Houston. 6 lanes. I'm in the middle. 5 lanes. Rush hour, 6 o'clock at night, 60 miles an hour if we're going down. And here's an entire tire in the middle lane. Not an alligator tire, entire tire. I'm in a Jaguar, and it's low. So I know that I can't negotiate it. I know that I can't run over it. And if I run into it, only God knows, it could be in my windshield or somebody else's. So I had to do one of those quick evaluations. You understand that. And cars are in all the lanes. So I thought, I'll go to the right. And I did one of 2 things, or both things wrong. I either turned the wheel too quickly or put on the brakes too quickly, or both. And the car spun 4.5 times around 4 and 5 into the shoulder, and I rammed into the back end of a truck that was in the shoulder that was changing a tire. I mean, I actually thought I was going to die. I honestly thought, and you understand how this is. If you've ever been in an accident like that, the car is spinning. I have no control. God, it's in your hands. Whatever's going to happen is going to happen. Fortunately, there were no cars in 4 or 5. I don't know how that happened except God. And when the car finally stops, there's blood, and I'm in shock. And I get out of the car, and I just have, you can't even tell now, but I have a scar that was right at a right line above my eyelid. So it was a wake-up call for me to get a will. You know, a lot of times we just say, we'll do that sometime. And I thought to myself, wow, if this would have happened today, I would have been so unfair to my children because they wouldn't even know what bank account they wouldn't even know how to get, you understand what I'm saying? I'm saying this because all of us need to be more conscious of that. So anyway, the Bible says what? I've not promised you tomorrow. Not promised you tomorrow. Some of you may have been in school when Mitch Nickens was there. Does anybody remember that? Mitch was there. The church folks won him to the Lord. Came to JCM, left JCM, went to Dallas. The next thing I know, he's about 31, and we find out that he's dying of AIDS. And so he passed away, went blind, shipping the body back to Houston. And they wanted Brother Kraft to do the funeral, and they wanted Maria and I to do the music. Well, this was really hard for me, because I had never known anybody that had died of AIDS. It was just, for whenever that was, it was just kind of a whole new thing. And so I remember wrestling with God about this. I just didn't get it. I didn't understand it. Didn't want to do the music at the funeral. God woke me up in the middle of the night, Jeannie, and said, I've not promised you tomorrow either. And it doesn't matter whether it's 31 or 81. To me, in my world, all life is short. And God went on to say, as a matter of fact, no one brings anything to the bargaining table. Because I thought, what does this guy have to offer God? Even if he did a bedside, a surrender and all that kind of thing. God said, nobody brings anything to the bargaining table except themselves, you included. So that's when I wrote the song. Some of you may remember the song, His Grace is Still Amazing to Me. And the second verse talks about take a life that's been broken and marred by sin. Life is short, folks, for all of us. And I think what happens between JCM and where we are now is life intercepts. And sometimes things go wrong. Sometimes things don't go as planned. And the devil will try to get you to make you think that you're not worthy to work for God, or that you can't work for God, or God can't really use you. God wants your gift, Kevin. And gifts are without recall, are they not? And since Satan can't get your gift, he'll do whatever he can to you to get you to not use the gift. So I want to remind you, some of you are sitting here and you're saying that, wait, maybe I gave up a dream. Maybe God has given up on me. Maybe Satan has convinced me I'm too old, I'm too weak, I'm too vulnerable, I'm too flawed. Remember, Noah was a drunk. Abraham was too old. Sarah was certainly too old. Isaac was a daydreamer. Jacob was a liar. Leah was ugly. Poor Leah. Joseph was abused. Moses had a stuttering problem. Hey, my brother. God said, shut up. I got the right number, and I know your name. Gideon was afraid. Samson had long hair and was a womanizer. Rahab was a prostitute. Jeremiah and Timothy were too young. David had an affair and was a murderer. If David tried to get on our praise team today, Hector, we wouldn't let him. Are you kidding? You're a murderer and an adulterer. You're going to sit in the back pew for about 3 years, and then you can come back to the board and we'll test you again. Elijah was suicidal. Isaiah preached naked. Well, you didn't have to get so excited about that. Jonah ran from God. Naomi was a widow. Job went bankrupt. John the Baptist ate bugs. Peter denied Christ. The disciples all fell asleep on the job, did they not? Martha worried about everything. Mary Magdalene was a demon-possessed woman. The Samaritan woman was divorced and more than once. Zacchaeus was too small. Paul was too religious. Timothy had an ulcer. And Lazarus was dead. God can use you. I'm saying that because some of you need to be reminded that wherever you are in this journey called life, God wants to use you today. You say, but I failed, or I gave up, or I didn't do this, or I felt like I didn't do God's will at this crossroads, or I feel like that I'm not worthy. All those reasons you want to throw at God. God said, I put all these people in the book so you could be reminded that I use flawed people. I use people that are not perfect, and you're one of them. So aren't you glad that God uses all of us? God sees all of us. I love the scripture that says, Philippians 1:6, you know it. Being confident of this very thing, that he who began a good work in you will. This word in the American Standard Version, King James said, will perform it. The American Standard said, will perfect it until the day of Jesus Christ. Edison was how many tries perfecting the light bulb? Thousands of times perfecting. So God is perfecting us, and we're not perfect yet. And Satan would come at us daily and say, you're not worthy to work for God. God doesn't want to, excuse me, you know, God worked with imperfect people. God works with us. Aren't you glad God works with us? I want to relay one thing, and then if we have time to sing, we will. A minister dies and is waiting at the pearly gates. Ahead of him is a man dressed in loud shirt, jeans, and sunglasses. Peter asked, who are you? The man replied, Joe Cohen, taxi driver, New York City. Peter checked his list, handed him a silk robe and a gold staff, and said, enter into heaven. The minister steps forward and says, I'm Joseph Snow, pastor of St. Mary's Cathedral in Memphis, Tennessee. Peter checks his list and handed him a cotton robe and a wooden staff. The minister said, wait a minute. The taxi driver gets a silk robe and a gold staff. How can this be? Peter replied, up here, we work by results. When you preached, people slept. When he drove, people prayed. So it's results that count. Do we have time to sing? Because we have to get out here by 11. If you don't mind, can you scoot some stuff up here closer? If you can't, just don't scoot. Whoa. I was at the piano at FPC 9:30 on Sunday morning, and God just dropped this into my head. Jesus be the Lord of all. Jesus be the Lord of all. Jesus be the Lord of all. The kingdoms of my heart. Jesus, I surrender all. Jesus, I surrender all. Jesus, I surrender all. The kingdoms of my heart. Columbia, Mississippi. They invited the trio, and the Lord gave me surely the presence that day. A friend of mine in the music industry, he was accompanying a group from Benson at Dr. Cho's church in Korea. Little church of, 1 million folks. They have 11 services on Sunday, over 100,000 each. So he said they were in a service, and they were singing Surely the Presence in all of these different languages at the same time. He said it was the most heavenly thing he'd ever experienced. Surely the presence of the Lord is in this place. I can feel his mighty power and his grace. I can hear the brush of angels' wings. I see glory on each face. Surely the presence of the Lord is in this place. What's kind of humorous to me is that was one of the songs I'd use when people auditioned for choir. And I remember some folks, I'd have to hold their hand. They were so nervous. They honestly were nervous. I said, it's okay, I'll hold your hand, let's sing. And some of these kids that come in from, they've been on drugs, etc. So they would say, I can hear the rush of angels' wings. And other things. I actually got to the point, this sounds like this isn't true, I got to the point where I really didn't know what the correct words to that third line was, because I'd heard so many variations from people trying out. God gave this to me when I was 17. Only Jesus can satisfy your soul. Only He can change your heart and make you whole. He'll give you peace you never knew, sweet love and joy and heaven too. For only Jesus can satisfy your soul. I keep falling in love with Him over and over and over again. I keep falling in love with Him. Over and over again. I love the thrill that I feel when I get together. God's wonderful people. Love the thrill that I feel when I get together with God's wonderful people. What a sight just to see all the happy faces praising God in heavenly places. What a thrill that I feel. Get together with God's wonderful people. And Lord, you know I need my strength from yesterday is gone. Okay, Melody, get the one mic that we have left. Melody, you take soprano, Tracy alto, James and Kevin tenor. Get in there. Hector, get in there too. Just come up here. This is my vocal group. Get up in here. Okay, get around the mic. Now, if you hear something wrong, it's from that mic.